And here we go.
Okay. Well, aloha from Empire and El Dorado Polo in the desert. My name's Patrick Brett, and I'm here because I've been playing polo a long, long time, and I've always considered polo to be a gentleman's game and a ladies' game. And actually, the reality contradicts that supposition. So, what we've done is we've created something called 29 Commandments. Not necessarily a blue book, but ideas on how we can better communicate. We're going to have a series of roundtable discussions for the PTF, and that's why we're here today. I'd like to introduce some players here. First of all, President of the PTF, Hi. Danny Shiraga, Steve Lane, penalty number one himself. No, Steve Lane, head umpire of the U.S. Polo Association, Craig Lansby of Wyoming and California polo fame. 5 goals once.
It was once 5 goals.
5 goals.
Long, long ago.
And if you haven't seen Glenn Hart play, he's a 9-goaler.
Yeah,
but if you have seen him play, he's probably a little less than 2, right?
That's absolutely right.
He's from Oregon.
Right.
And we have Duke on the camera. Now we're going to start off and have an open discussion on the commandments. Give me some info here, guys.
It's pretty well laid out, Patrick.
Okay.
Like number 1 is a game, and number 2 I think is the most important.
Okay. Why don't you read number 1 so our TV audience will know.
Number 1 is it is a game. Being a pro is a tough road. Keep the game in the proper perspective. Family and work need to be respected.
Any comments on that, or we got concurrence?
I concur.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean,
How about
this is well thought out.
Well,
You know, we basically have not much to argue about with all of these things. There's a few things in here.
Well, we're here for tune-ups too. Why don't you read number 2, Glenn?
Okay, I may have to get some assistance to do that properly, so I will.
I'll tell you what.
Learn to ride, be a horseman, never too late. Polo players as a whole do not ride well. Use your legs and rear end to control the horse. The reins are not the only apparatus. The secret of riding is DWYA. Olympic equestrian trainers force control of the horse by riding bareback without reins in an arena while using your okoli to divide, stop, and turn your horse.
Goalie's Hawaiian for your bottom side. Number 3, Craig. Let's talk. Is anybody like?
Yeah.
Let's talk about number 2 a little.
Well, I think nowadays you have a lot of beginning players who learn to ride, and even some intermediate players that are fairly good polo players, but they are not horsemen.
Yes. How many polo players can post? And you know, when I was learning with the Olympic instructor during my 20s, they had us riding around an arena with the reins tied, bareback, and controlling the horse all strictly with our okoli, as we'd say in Hawaii. Just like that.
Yeah.
And if you notice, when you're approaching the ball, the biggest thing with hitting is to get to set this position up early. And if you're using your bottom to drive that horse, you can put it right up there perfectly.
Not only can you put the horse there, but it locks you in, so you're securing your seat. And I find I get people who come through all the time that are just learning the sport, and you tell them, especially when they first started, they need to work on their riding. And I can't tell you how many times players have said to me that oh, I don't have to worry, I know how to ride a horse. And I got a guy I'm working with right now, as a matter of fact, that I said this to 3 years ago, and now 3 years later he's ready to start listening, and he figured out that's going to be the key to learning to ride, because if you have a secure seat, then the rest of the game's easy.
Kathy Lindfoot was teaching players here that were 4 and 5, 6-go handicaps. She was teaching them just riding, because they reached the point as a pro. They knew they had to be. It seems reasonable knowing how to ride a horse well would help with the game.
One thing that I've always done with so many players and young players is take their stirrups away, because most of them do not know where their seat is.
Right.
And that's the easiest way to do it, bareback. Or
Later on the saddle.
Yeah. And you know, when I meant they're not horsemen, I meant on foot too. They don't know anything about feeding, loading a horse in the trailer. I mean,
and that's number 3, Steve. Read number 3.
Any worthwhile endeavor should dictate at least a passing knowledge in the sport and all relative disciplines: vetting, purchasing a horse, tack, grooming, exercise, diet, tactic, etc.
And every one of these is covered in the videos and the training we've been working on since the 1980s.
Yeah.
And you know, when you go in the military, you might have a job as a truck driver, especially in the Marine Corps. You might have a job as a truck driver or a logistics guy, but you know every weapon, every job, every man in that unit. You know how to take it apart. You know everything. And it seems to me a competent polo player should know much more than just how to hit the ball.
Agreed.
It's funny in relationship to that. Attacking the horse as an example is I was working with a bunch of instructors, and they said, oh, for adults you got to have the horses tack. And, you know, for kids maybe it's okay to teach them a tack. And I just had a fit over that, and then I actually had a summer of adults, and I was making them tack their horses.
Amen.
For an hour lesson, it was taking them an hour to tack their horses, even after a summer of lessons. So I talked to another friend of mine. He says, what you got to do is spend the first lesson, all you do is tack and untack and tack and untack the horse. Then they'll remember.
Like the military would do it.
Yeah.
I got to Golden Gate Park for my first lesson in the fall of '75. The lady had the horse all ready for me. But having come, I said, no, we got to start. That's not going to work. I said, take all that stuff off. I have to do it on my own, because that's the way it should be. And when I groomed several times, not many times, a half a dozen times, I groomed for myself and 6 horses. I had to start 4 hours early.
Yeah.
I wasn't good at it, but at least they knew how to do it.
Wiki was 3 goals when he came here from Pakistan.
Uh-huh.
He did not know how to tackle
Well,
it.
yeah, a lot of
Oh,
sorts.
yeah. I've run into that a lot.
They have servants.
And Podger, I think, was even higher.
Yeah,
And
really.
neither one of them knew how to do it at all. I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
Okay, number 4. For those who believe about running around on a polo horse and striking the ball, that's all it is, are misguided, perhaps overdue for some basic riding school. Ignorance only makes for a loser, and it will actually place their life and well-being at risk. But that's,
Case in point, same guy I was just talking about that
Right.
I'm working with now. He's almost gotten run over 3 times in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
You know, just hasn't learned to ride. Again, it always goes back
Right.
to learning how to ride.
Right.
So he's hunched forward, looking
Right.
within himself, staring at the horse
Right.
brain. He stays on, and has no awareness of what's going on around him.
right. Glenn, would you read number 5, please?
Sure. Remember the personally character traits you display during the passion of the game may represent your real character in distress. Much is revealed.
And the quote?
The quote. Quote Patrick. I believe the way a person behaves in a game under pressure is the real person. Ruben Gracida, 7 Golder, SBA, Santa Barbara, 1989.
We all know some extraordinary gentlemen, published, successful. These same gentlemen, we're not going to leave their names out here, we all know them. When they get on a horse and they're under stress, they change dramatically.
Yeah, and I think some of it is theatrics to get a work out of the crowd, and I've never quite understood the reason for theatrics, but there's a bunch of them nowadays in polo.
I know a lot of them come from that South America.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say
Caramba.
that, but I can't disagree with you.
It's okay, but we Americans do our share.
Yeah, we
After
do.
all, we have Hollywood. Okay, number 6. Because a player is guilty of crossing the line, well, this is one of my favorites recently. Guilty of crossing the line doesn't mean they should be run down or injured. Comments?
I can comment on that. You know, nowadays we're teaching crossing the line is not a foul. A violation of the right-of-way or getting in somebody's right-of-way is a foul, and there again I agree with your
Right.
second part of this. We have to avoid collisions at all times, even when we're correct, and that a person should not be run down at any time, even though they're fouling.
That's a clear chance to avoid an accident.
There are places where guys in the right-of-way, the line, and recently there's one where a really fine gentleman was encouraged by his pro. It's your line, do it. And he took the guy down and injured the horse and the man. I think an analogy to this is, let's say somebody's jaywalking. He's walking across the middle of the street and they're totally illegal, jaywalking. Does that give an automobile guy a right to run him down?
No,
How will the law work on that?
although sometimes you'd like to, but no, it
Yeah.
doesn't do the right.
And You like to read number 7, Steve?
You cannot win or control every play. Do not risk a foul. Go on to the next play.
Mac Jason used to say that all the time.
You know, that is so hard to teach people nowadays. When in doubt, don't. Go to the next play.
300 yards.
You don't have a play on every single play. You're not guaranteed to hit a hook or a write-off on every
Amen.
single play.
Amen.
Any additions to that?
Okay. Craig, why don't you read the next one, number 8.
Speaking of foolishness, when a player fouls near the mouth of the goal, it should merit penalty number 1. It is not in the book. It is in the book, isn't it?
How would you know?
Yeah. In fact, we had a penalty one. Our team was awarded a penalty one.
You had 2 in that game.
We had 2.
Yeah.
Our team was awarded 2 in that game.
This year?
Yeah.
Wow.
2 weeks ago. We've actually had 5 here at the club this season so far. And of course, dangerous and deliberate are not in the rule anymore for penalty ones, with the USBA thinking that there should be more penalty ones called.
With things like that changing, how many players, even been around a long time, have read the complete Blue Book rules? I would try to read them once a year on a plane ride or something. I try to do the change, few things change. I try to understand them a little more every year.
I can tell you that when I was a pro, I read them every week, every single week, because that's the key to winning a game, is knowing
And you only
the
got
ins
5
and
goals?
outs. That was it. I was lazy.
I spent 10 years teaching umpire
Must have been a
clinics.
slow reader.
And,
Oh, yeah.
if I didn't read, when I flew to a clinic, I did better teaching the clinic than when I drove to it, because I read the rule book on the plane, and I'd have to go 4 or 5 weeks in a row before I could skip reading that rule book. Because one thing, there was always some fellow who'd played polo for 50 years that had some obscure question he was going to try to trick you up on, and you had to be ready for that guy, and you could almost pick him out when you walked in the room. But it was always a little different question.
Guardhouse lawyer.
Yep.
The umpiring. Prior to the throw-in, give a serious, no-nonsense warning that all fouls will be whistled. Set the tone firmly. Get their attention. Now this is, a couple of my polo pals in Hawaii took umbrage with this. I feel that every game has its own special character. And lazy or inept umpires create another form of character. And I know when you arrive in the military or you arrive in a business situation, if early somebody sets the standard, that's the tone the whole time. If you arrive in the military, the first few hours, first few days, it's just amazing what they do to you, and they have a very easy time with you after that. When I arrive in the polo field, when I was umpiring, I would, even though a lot of these fellows were my friends, I'd change my complete composure. I got up for a few seconds. I said, listen, you cannot win every play. Be prepared to go on to the next play. Let it go. Don't do something foolish. I'm here. I'm going to blow every single foul. Look at me. And I make that point to all 8 players. And then I blow the ball in. And I look early to try to get something that was valid to set the tone. And I found if I did that, that game was really easy. I had them all believing.
Yeah, there's truth in that. Steve controls the game from the time he doesn't even have to make a speech.
Well, he's also got the crown. He's the head guy, head umpire of the USBA. But a lot of these are your friends, and they're expecting you to be relaxed, and a couple various people just don't expect to have a lot of whistles.
Yeah, well, we feel if you control the game, then you don't have to control the players. The players fall in or follow suit,
That's right,
so to speak. But yeah, setting the tone early is.
I think this, all the things we've read so far, I find the most beneficial. I'm playing an amateur league polo here at El Dorado, and it's really a mix. There's some guys been playing as long as I have, and you wonder if they shouldn't even be on a horse like they ask me when I'm out there. But so many rookies are in the game, and I don't believe, I'm not criticizing umpiring here, but it is overlooked most of the time. There isn't the tone set, and regardless of whether I call a foul or not, we're going to enforce it, and it really would set the tone as we get into a game. Here, people are late, it's a little rush getting going sometimes, trying to stay on schedule, and just throw the ball in and play. Very few instructions. It would be quite helpful to us.
It's short. I'm very short speech.